Hi everyone, it's Bman here with another Conan Exiles tutorial. Today I've got for you a little cozy hunting cabin hidden in the snowy forest. If you're looking for something larger or maybe a different style of house, check the rest of my channel and hit the subscribe button as there's more Conan Exiles content coming. Okay, let's start building. The house is tiny and has a very simple L shape. I'm going to place 4 rows of foundations. First 3 rows will have 5 tiles each, while the last one only 3. I'm paying special attention to keep the blocks aligned to the same axis, so that the planks make a continuous pattern. I'm using less building placement restrictions, so there's an arrow to guide me, but even if you do not use mods, the planks are barely visible on the outline. To differentiate between house foundations and porch, I'm placing fence foundations around the house. Then come the walls. The house will have 2 doors, main entrance at the front and the kitchen door leading to the backyard. Since the house itself is very simple, I'm going to add some geometrical complexity with the roof to make the interior more interesting. To that end, I've created 4 gables, so that I end up with 2 gabled roofs intersecting above the living room. This will also add a lot of volume to the interior, as the amount of walls terminating in the sloped roofs is minimized, and their placement helps to create distinctive areas inside the house. Notice that 4 of them are located on the left side from the entrance, then the 2 more are at the far end, while the central part of the house has a lot of headspace. This is very important, since I need to place a lot of different things inside that won't look good together. For this reason, internal divisions are necessary. On the other hand, this house is so small that placing any hard dividers inside, like walls, will turn it from cozy to claustrophobic. But there are other ways to create a distinct area inside a shared volume. Here I am going to use soft line of sight manipulation. Entering through the main door leaves the whole living area in plain sight, while the secondary areas, kitchen and bedroom, are off to the side. To actually fit them on the 3x2 tiles area, and to further enhance the division, I've created a mezzanine, which will hide the kitchen beneath. This is also a perfect place for the bed. The combination of sloped roof and being above the ground floor gives it a bit of privacy and makes it feel cozy and warm. And that's the basic house done. It looks horrible though, artificial and awkward. It feels out of place. To remedy this issue, I'm going to add some elements that will soften the transition from organic shapes of the environment to the flat walls and right angles of the house. A porch is an acceptable solution to the problem. It creates an intermediate step between the outside dominated by nature and man-made structure. Also, it allows for some complexity on the otherwise flat exterior walls. I've extended the back porch to create room for some of the crafting stations. It won't fit all of them, but that's actually a positive. I'll have some left to place around the backyard. I want to plug this little gap with fence, but terrain rises here slightly, so simply snapping the fence won't work. So I'm using the fence trick to elevate the foundation to appropriate height. The situation is reversed on the other side of the house. Sure, I could leave it like that, but I want a fence, not a wall. Also, there's one more issue. I want to place a gate here, so that the backyard is accessible without going through the house. And this requires some kind of foundation, either regular one or fence. To resolve the issue, I need the reverse fence trick. I'm placing a foundation, then snapping fence foundation to it at a lower elevation, then another foundation on the lower level, and so on. This won't work with all the tile sets, so you might need to use temporary blocks from the ones that allow this. Once the fence foundation is barely above the ground, I placed the gate and started laying foundations for the remaining part of the fence, which, thanks to the gently lowering slope, has a proper height. Since we have mounts in game now, I decided to add small stables, but first I need to elevate the foundation with the fence trick, so that the second row is not clipping into the ground. This will be a relatively small building, only 4x2 tiles. I've decided to place a low barrier inside to divide it into two separate areas, one for the horse, and the second to place the new workbench for making saddles. I want the building to feel different from the house. Its character and function should be obvious at a first glance, so I've decided to give it this relatively open facade, and to further distinguish it from the house, I've covered it with a hip roof, so that it feels small and low, when in fact it's almost the same height as the house. On the other hand, I wanted to keep the visuals somehow consistent between the two, so I've chose insulated wood for the walls, and only used stable tiles for the internal division and the front. Building the stables here created this little hidden nook in the corner of the yard. That's just perfect for an outhouse. This may seem silly, but adding details like this make the place seem real. There's a small river flowing right next to the house, so it's an obvious water and food source, but also an obstacle. And considering all this snow laying around, crossing it is not a pleasant experience. So I've built a little bridge and placed fish traps underneath it. Of course, this little stream does nothing in terms of gameplay and can be crossed safely without freezing your feet off. But that's beside the point. It's all about the perception and illusion of realism. It's not about what you can or can't do in game, it's about what you would do in this situation in real life. The last step before I can move on to decorating the place is to plant the forest around the house. Coniferous trees lose branches that do not receive sunlight, so I've chosen tall trees with bare trunks for the middle of the grove, and placed the ones with all the branches intact on the outskirts. The house and road leading to it are flanked by the first kind, to give the illusion that this area used to be the middle of the forest. To enhance this effect, I've also placed a couple of trees in the backyard. Now that the house and yard are blended with the environment, it's time to add some contrast as a highlight, to complete the picture. In this environment, open fire is the perfect choice. Warm, rich color that promises comfort and safety fits the cozy little house well. Also, the animation brings some life to the front. It catches attention due to prominent opposition on the vertical axis. Snow gently falls down, fire goes up. The whole backyard is dedicated to crafting. As always, I started by placing key elements, the crafting stations in this case. Then added clutter and decorations that make sense. I try to imagine how everyday life would look in the place I'm building. What are the daily chores? What work is taking most of the day? And how to wind down after it's done? But the first and most important question is, who lives there? So, let's imagine a couple living on their own deep in the wilderness. Who are they? How did they met? Why they chose to spend their lives together? It's easy to imagine a lonely hunter stalking the woods day after day, hearing the echoing laughter of the huntress chasing her prey, never seeing more than a glimpse of her in between the trees, until one day he catches her. Or make it a comedy. Picture an easygoing yet clumsy fisherman, falling asleep on the riverbank after setting up traps, and waking up to a hungry bear deciding if he should be his next meal, but being saved in the last moment by a huntress who witnessed the whole situation. There are countless stories that may lead to a couple living together in a secluded house deep in the woods. It's easy to imagine that they live happily ever after. Details of that life, on the other hand, not really. What I'm trying to say is, coming up with an epic story or a happy tale is what we like to do. Our imaginations are perfectly capable of creating emotional scenes with ease. For location design, this will give you the overall idea. But then comes the hard part, the art of creating mundane, forgettable, the mastery of background. Imagine our couple sitting by the fireplace, sharing a laugh. That means someone had to bring the wood here. There's probably a chopping block and an axe somewhere, and some logs laying around. Next morning, it's time for work. Either hunt or process the game, cure hides, salt and dry the meat, then pack it into the barrels. Maybe load some on the cart and take it to the market, to barter for things they can't make themselves. Forget the important events. Forget the life-changing moments. The most boring day of your life dictates what's around you. The significant, impactful times are just memories, like the trophies hanging on the walls, gathering dust.